Hey everybody, I'm Jeremy Signor. You may know me from writing across the internet about games like GameSpot, GamesBeat, US Gamer, and independent outlets like Unwinnable and GameSpot Quarterly from years ago. But now I'm making videos, and this is my very first one. I wanted to um, do one because I went to too many games this past last weekend. Um, and I got it's a retro game show basically. It's not exclusively retro, but there's all kinds of vendors there. That's the main draw. You get to see all sorts of games, and you can buy a ton of them. And I actually did, and that's why my table back here is so cluttered. And I want to show you what I ended up getting. So that'd be fun. Um, so let's start with the NES games. Um, Picked up a few on the cheap that they're not like rare or anything, but I wanted to try them. First one I wanted to get was Solstice. Actually, a really interesting, um, sort of isometric, sort of platformy RPG sort of thing. Um, I have a ton of NES games already, and I was completely surprised by how many I wanted to get. And a lot of them were worth a lot of money. Um, but I managed to limit myself. Um, for instance, Ghost Lion is one of the two that I paid the most for. Paid about mm, 30, 33 or something like that. But it's a Kemco RPG that has some really interesting mechanics. Kemco made some really fascinating stuff in this era. Not always like good or like classic stuff, but with Ghost Lion, you play as a girl who gains like instead of hit points and experiences like hopes and dreams and whatever. And it's actually based on a Japanese movie starring um, uh, actors who spoke English, including someone from who guest starred on Full House a couple times. It's really weird, but yeah, there's a Let's Play of this um, that is actually what convinced me to buy it. Um, you can check it out in the link I put here. But I'm always interested in fascinating games. I'm hesitant to like label them necessarily like good and bad and shove the bad ones aside and only talk about the good ones. Games are broader than that, and I love it when games do interesting things, even if they're not entirely successful. So I'm looking forward to delving into this. Now this one was a really good find. Shadowgate, which is a pretty infamous for being a Mac venture that you die a lot in. And Mac ventures are basically point and click adventure games that you played on an Apple computer, um, usually first person. This one is just famous for you dying a lot. And I actually managed to get a copy of this one with a manual, which is awesome. Now, I don't go for box copies of these games because I don't collect them like that. Um, I like playing them, and boxes for NES, Super NES, etc. games aren't really good for storage. They were never meant for storage. They were meant to carry the game. But um, yeah, it's really neat to get the manual for one of these. Um, it's got a hint guide in the back, hint guide ad on the back, I mean, and you can send in for a hint book, which probably won't work if you send it in now, but it's really cool as an artifact of a bygone era. And it's a Chemco game again, or at least published by. So yeah, that's a really neat find. Um, Demon Sword. I don't know a lot about this one. I've heard good things from a couple people. Uh, heard it described as Legend of Kage, sort of. Um, but what made me snap it up is because it's published by Taito at least, and Taito is a really underrated maker of games. Makes some really good games with awesome sound. I'm a big fan. I even wrote an article about their house band Zuntata, which made music for basically all the Taito games, um, because it was an in-house band. Um, it's most apparent when you go play something like G Darius, which I love the soundtrack too, so go play that if you haven't. Um, but yeah, sometimes you just gotta pick up something that looks cool. And technically not NES, but um, I was at the import store, uh, and I was looking at games, and I was asking about some prices just to see what they were, and I saw a copy of this game that was in a box, and I asked if he had one out of a box. I wasn't necessarily going to buy it, but then he came down in price $5, and then I was sort of taken aback, but then he immediately went, I'll take it off $10. So I snapped it up, and that would be Lagrange Point, which is actually a game I've always wanted to try because it's one of those rare games that has an extra sound chip in it, like Castlevania 3. You'll notice it's Konami, so I'm gonna shake it. You hear that? That's the extra sound chip. And it's an RPG, so it's not gonna be translated, but I'm gonna try to get like a Retron 5 or something like that so that I can dump this on there and get a translation patch because I really want to try this. Um, but yeah, I actually did get a couple other Famicom games just because it was in a bin that was like 2 for 10 or whatever. Uh, this one. The good thing about Famicom games is a lot of them, the the art on the front actually shows gameplay footage. This one is what attract. This is what attracted me to this one. I believe it's called something like Legend of Valkyrie, but it looks very Zelda, so I wanted to snap it up. Um, can't wait to try it. So this other game that I got, I didn't know what it was. I had a hard time finding what it was called, but I finally found it. It's another Namco game, just like Legend of Valkyrie. This one, you notice it looks really interesting on the front. It's got army battling. It's because this is a simulation, like in the vein of Nobunaga's Ambition, those Koei games, but this one's called Dokuganryu Masamune, and it's exactly what you think. It's a sort of a war simulation strategy game. Um, done around the unification of Japan era. It's actually tied into a television series that aired in Japan as well. So I thought that was really interesting, and I'm kind of curious about it. I couldn't find a translation of this one either, so I'm not sure if I'm actually going to be able to understand it if I play it, but we'll see. Um, and I forgot, there is one NES game I didn't mention, and this was the one I probably... I paid around the same thing as Ghost Lion, but it's Power Blade. And if you've heard of this, you know that it's a really good, sort of like a Mega Man, but it's sort of set like, you notice it's the guy that looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and it's sort of futuristic a bit. It's another Taito game, so that's another good sign that it's from a good pedigree. And that's another one I'm dying to play. And I've got to thank Kurt Collada for giving me a deal on this. Kurt Collada from Hardcore Gaming 101. So, thanks a lot. So let's move on to the Super Nintendo games I got. Um, so these three are actually related, and that I've been looking for these for a while now. Um, when I was a kid, I got Nintendo Power in the mail, and I always looked at the section called Epic Center because that was the dedicated RPG section that they had for a while. And I basically loved every game I saw there, even before I played them. I was dying to play all of them. Like I was dying to play Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy VI. They looked so cool, and I finally got to play them after a while. But some of the lesser known ones sort of got swept away, lost to time. That was a lot, and those were a lot of the NX games that came through the system. Um, and I tracked down three of them finally. First one, Soul Blazer. This is, if you don't know, this is considered an absolute classic, sort of Zelda-like, but with existential, melancholy mini narratives within each of the scenarios you find yourself in. This is basically the prequel to Illusion of Gaia, which is one of my favorite uh, games of all time, let alone Super NES games. There's a lot of, and if this is anything like that, there's a lot more maturity in the storytelling than you usually saw in games for the time. So I'm actually really excited to play this. I got is Robotrek, which is really interesting because it's actually co-developed by Quintet, who did Soul Blazer, Illusion of Gaia, all those games, and Ancient, which is Yuzo Koshiro's game company. And if you don't know who Yuzo Koshiro is, he's a big, famous chiptune guy who also had his own development studio, made stuff like Beyond Oasis, that sort of thing, but did like super memorable soundtracks for the Streets of Rage series, even all the way up to Etrian Odyssey games now. So, big deal. This is actually, you build robots in this, and you can customize them, and uh, yeah, it seems super interesting the whole time, and I'm actually really excited I got to find it. You'll notice I'm really excited about a lot of these games because they're not stuff you usually see on Virtual Console or um, other download services. I've gone to too many games 2 years in a row, and it's generally the time I usually splurge on buying all these old games. It gets me really excited that I'm actually able to try them finally. Um, because like I said before, these are lost to time for me until now. and it's always cool to uh, rediscover these things you always wanted to try. That's the joy of going through and buying old games, I think. The other one I wanted to get, this one. This is Brain Lord, which is kind of action RPG-ish, but at the same time puzzly. You get like a number of different familiars that help you out in battles and puzzles, and always seemed really interesting and arcane to me, um, because I could never pin down what exactly it was. Like it had all these disparate elements that I didn't know how they cohesed, but again, I'm really excited to try it. Um, so yeah, that's my trio of NX games I found. NX RPGs, in fact. Um, I got two other Super Nintendo games. These were on the cheap. They looked interesting, so I decided to get them. First one's Young Merlin. Sort of looks like a uh, Zelda camera style top-down thing. Um, Not certain how it plays. It might be adventure game-ish. It might have some combat. I'm not sure. Can't wait to find out. It's a I don't hear a lot of people talk about it, but the few I have tell me it's very good. So that'll be interesting. This other one, Kid Clown in Crazy Chase. Now, it's not one I was really looking for, not one I was ever excited to track down, but when I saw this game in the pages of Nintendo Power, it always looked really weird because it looked like a runner. It looked like a runner where you're running on an isometric plane, trying to avoid things, jumping over things. And that's not something I ever saw before. And this was for like $6, $8, so I decided, what the heck, I'll try it. And it's another Kemco game. I don't see as many Kemco Super Nintendo games, so I know it's gonna be interestingly weird. And I actually got one Super Famicom game, which I wasn't trying to um, find. I actually got one Super Famicom game, and I wasn't trying to find this again. It was sitting at a smaller import vendor's table, and I was sort of looking at it because it was just kind of sitting there. It was the only box copy on there, and it was marked for $20. I just looked at it, and the vendor said, "I'll give it to you for 10." I'm like, "Sure, I'll try it." It's this one. Um, this is Dyson Ryaku Expert. Um, and as you see, that's great strategy expert. But the Dyson Ryaku is a long-running strategy series that I never heard of before, but it's apparently got a lot of games in Japan. And if you look on the back here, the screenshots sort of make it look like Advanced Wars with hexagons, kinda. I don't know how it plays, but it looks super fascinating. And it's a box copy even that I got for super cheap, so It's really cool curiosity, and I'm happy I stumbled on. That's part of the joy of these shows. You stumble on these cool things that aren't necessarily what you're looking for, but when you do find it, you're really happy you found it. Um, all right, so I picked up a few handheld games as well. Um, so the big one I scored was this one, which is Revelations: The Demon Slayer, but longtime Shin Megami Tensei fans may know it better as Last Bible, and it's basically like mm, it's Shin Megami Tensei on Game Boy, but with more of like a fantasy vibe to it. So I'm really happy I was able to get this because I always am looking for cool Game Boy RPGs because I never found a lot of them at the time. All I had was like the Saga games, and that's about it. And there's a lot of cool stuff on the platform. Um, and there's this one, which is called Power Quest. And I'd never heard of this before. It was for sale for $5. I got, um, I looked at it and it was from Sunsoft. And Sunsoft's another one of those publishers where I immediately know I'm interested if it's from Sunsoft. They make some excellent games, excellent soundtracks. Um, this one I'd never heard of, but apparently it's a fighting RPG hybrid type game, which sounds endlessly fascinating to me. Um, so want to try that too. And these last two Game Boy games are curiosities, again, that I didn't expect to find, but I'm happy I did find them. Um, so these, if you notice, they look kind of weird. They don't look like Game Boy cartridges. That's because these are unlicensed games. And what we have here is Spiritual Warfare, who, which is like a sort of Zelda-like game made by Wisdom Tree, who made a lot of Christian games for the Christian market. And the other one is also by them. It's called Joshua: The Battle of Jericho, which I know nothing about, but I figured these cartridges just look so different and cool. I just wanted to pick both of them up. I was actually looking for Spiritual Warfare because I way back when I watched basically a Let's Play stream type thing uh, on One Up. It was a Shame Night with Frank Svaldi and Sharky. They played Spiritual Warfare for the NES, and it didn't necessarily look like a good game. It just looked vastly fascinating. And ever since then, I've always wanted to get a copy. I almost got an NES copy because my friend Joe said he found one, and it was sold before I got there. But I found this instead, which I think is cooler because you always see NES Wisdom Tree games at shows like these and just all over the place. But you never see Wisdom Tree Game Boy cartridges. Look how weird the cartridge looks. I mean, look at this. Like, the pins are exposed here. That's how it's designed. Like, it's a thin strip. You feel like you could snap it right off. I feel like this is not a good design, but it is a cool curio. And I'm really excited to try Spiritual Warfare in particular. But I'm just happy to have these, just because again, you don't see a lot of them. And like I said, that's the joy of shows like these. You stumble upon neat surprises. The last handheld game I got, it was a Neo Geo Pocket Color game. It's Neo Turf Masters. Now, this is a golf game. I'm not a big golf game fan, but last year I got a Neo Geo Pocket Color and a bunch of games, and I couldn't leave the show without getting at least one Neo Geo Pocket Color game. Um, and I've always heard that this game is super good, so I want to at least try it. And I just love building up my collection of this now. I love my Neo Geo Pocket Color. I played through the Metal Slugs, and I've got a couple more games that I can go through. Actually, last year is interesting because I found the Ogre Battle Neo Geo Pocket Color game at an import store. So, yeah, I love the system, even though I've only had it for like a year. Um, so down to our last three. These are for later systems. Last year I got my first Saturn game, which was Dragon Force. It wasn't in a case or anything. So I wanted to get some more Saturn games this year. I got two, and one of them is terrible. It's this one, Space Hulk, Vengeance of the Blood Angels. Now, Space Hulk is actually a very famous, legendary, in fact, board game made by Games Workshop, which is set in the 40K universe. And that's a whole nother thing that like has huge amount of lore and history behind that I'm not going to get into here. But this game is based on the board game, based on the setting. And this is not a board game though. This is a first-person shooter type thing. And again, it's apparently terrible, as you might expect from a first-person shooter on Saturn. Everything looks like a blobby thing. I was mostly trying to... I wanted this because I love the board game, and I'm sort of adjacent to all my friends play 40K, so I'm sort of surrounded by 40K a lot. So this is more, I want to experience it, even though I know I'm gonna regret it. um, Now the other one I got was actually supposedly a good game, and it's an import one. It's called Deep Fear. Now this is a survival horror type joint set on a cruise liner, so it's got emphasis on underwater horror. And I'm sort of a lapsed survival horror guy. I was into the Resident Evils and Silent Hills back then, but I never got like I haven't played a lot of games like that recently, so I kind of want to catch up. And I've heard nothing but good things about Deep Fear. Now, I was able to talk the price down on that a little bit, so I got it around like 20. And I talked the price down a bit, but I had to buy another game, and I actually saw another fascinating looking one, which is Frame Gride. And actually, let me shift that. It's developed by From Software, who does Dark Souls, but more relevant is they did Armored Core. But this is not Armored Core. This is another mech building and fighting game. And can show you. I'm not a big Armored Core guy. I just kind of was interested in this because I've never heard of it. I didn't know it existed. And oh, by the way, this is a Dreamcast game, in case you can't tell from the orange swirly up here. But yeah, I just mainly got it because From Software, and never heard of it. Sometimes you got to take a chance on those things. I actually got 6 other Game Boy games, but I got them in mystery bags. and you can actually see me opening mine, which I got two in my friend Joe Drilling's video, which I'll link here. And you can see us opening them after the show in his hotel room. It's fun times. But yeah, that's what I got. Too Many Games was a blast. I am happy I got a ton of awesome looking retro games, and I'm probably going to be taking footage of some of them for future videos. So you can look forward to that. As for the immediate future of this channel, I'm probably going to do a bunch of videos featuring the games I play. Like, I've got a bunch of Odin Sphere footage for Odin Sphere video. I'm currently playing through Tokyo Mirage Sessions Sharp FE, which is really good, and I'll have a video on that. Um, and as well, I'll probably do a couple of articles for a future Patreon. That'll include videos and articles. Because I got Zero Time Dilemma and Bravely Default 2 on the back burner. Pocket Card Jockey is super good. And I got probably the odd board game review here and there. But yeah, so look forward to a lot more content from me, controlled by me. And I hope you'll continue to follow me. Hope you'll subscribe. See you next time then.